All right, everybody, Chapter 6, Broadband Solutions. Now, this will be a pretty short lecture, which is, you're probably like, woo, thank goodness. Um, some of the stuff they show in here, they show you like kind of the equipment used at the head end. But really, by the time you guys graduate and get a job at an ISP and get to the point where you're actually playing with equipment, at the central office, actual networking equipment, you have long forgot this chapter. But it's in the book, so we're going to cover it. Alright, so this is what we're going to talk about. That's what we hope you learn. Alright, teleworking. Teleworking obviously is just basically working from home, not working at the actual office. And according to Cisco, efficient teleworking involves broadband internet, VPNs, voice over IP, and video conferencing. Now, some places actually do require you to have video conferencing, while you're working from home. It's kind of weird. But the majority of places will set a standard and say, hey, you need to produce X amount of work each day, and then you can work from home, and then you can actually work from home kind of like whenever you want. But other places, you have to work from home during certain times. So they all have different rules. Now, according to Cisco, teleworking staff is between 8 and 40% more productive than office working staff. That's a tough sell for me. You really have to be motivated to work from home. There's a lot more distractions at home than there are at work. TV, food, people coming and going, that kind of stuff. But hey, well, I'm not going to argue. So, reduce costs. Now, you can reduce costs. Obviously, you don't have to buy a desk, a computer, an area for that person to be in. So, let's say you're a startup company and you've grown to a certain size and now you need to look for a new building. Well, you can just say, hey, I want X amount of people to work from home, and decide which jobs at that place are easier to work from, and then you can actually save the expense of buying a new office or something like that. All right, and then easier recruitment. Obviously, that's a huge recruiting tool. Hey, come work for us, and you can work from home. Man, I'm there. Me and my pajamas, yeah. Reduced absenteeism. Employees are calling off a lot less. They're working when they're sick or they have a cold. It's not a problem to work at home on a snow day. That kind of stuff. Improve morale, yes. Improve corporate citizenship, and improve customer service. I don't know. For us, years ago when we tried this, we had issues with people, and by that means. At first, we let them work anytime they wanted to. Like we started with the transcription staff. So we said, hey, you have to do X amount of words a day when you transcribe, because this is what you were doing here. Well, they would do those at different times of the day. So in the evening, they would start working. Well, in the evening, I was, at 5 o'clock, we closed up and I went home. So there was no tech support after 5 o'clock. Well, as soon as they would have an issue with the VPN or something, they would give us a call, but there was obviously nobody there. So then their excuse for that day was, oh, couldn't get my work done because I started at 6 and nobody was home. So we had issues like that. There was nobody to talk to. If they had questions about a transcription, they couldn't talk to somebody till the next day. And so we ended up having to enforce, hey, you have to do this between normal business hours, and that way there can't be any excuses, things like that. And then you have issues with what kind of PCs they have. Do they have enough PC to even run the VPN software or whatever else, like the transcription software that we were using? Do they have what kind of internet connection they have? We required them to have broadband, and most of the time it was a Time Warner cable if it was in their zone, and which was a small price to pay for them to work from home. Because one of the first girls to volunteer, she had dial-up. That wasn't going to work. So there's a lot of administration that goes into this teleworking thing. Some places you can get by with that. Like my brother-in-law is a programmer, and he teleworks. He works for a company up in Toledo. But he gets projects, and it's like, hey, you have this project, you have to code this, make this work, and you've got so many days, and then he can do it whenever he wants. So for him, it works out pretty well. Plus, he's obviously very motivated, and he gets his stuff done on time. But you will find that there are people that like to use the work from home as I'm going to do a lot less work than I ever did at work. So I digress. So, government benefits. Helps build a sustainable economy. Helps reduce contemporary problems such as traffic. Increases productivity. I can't even read these things without laughing. But you get the idea. So, obviously, Working from home does save a company money. The company doesn't have to buy you a phone for your desk. Just think about the paper supplies, the stapler, the scissors, all the stuff that goes with an employee. Um, no computer, no tech support for your PC, that kind of stuff. So it saves them a bunch of money. So theoretically, like I got 10 people working from home, it might save me enough to hire an 11th person. So things like that. Plus, obviously, it's way more attractive to employees. I would love to work from home. All right, benefits. Over 70% of teleworkers claim they are significantly more productive. Well, if I get to work from home, of course I'm going to claim I'm more productive. Who's not going to? But I digress. All right, time savings. It's then a lot of people don't work in the same city that they live in. Like obviously I live in Hartville and I work in North Canton. So it takes me about 30 to 35 minutes, depending on who I get behind, to get to work. Well, that's an hour a day. So I would actually save that hour by working from home. The only time I got to waste is the time to turn on my computer. And then cost savings, as an employee, you save on lunch. You don't have to spend the time packing your lunch. You don't have to go out and buy lunch all the time. You don't have to worry about work clothing, whatever you're paying for commuting, the gas, all that stuff. So it saves you a ton of money. We had a girl that lived in Canton South as a transcriptionist, and we required her. He said, "Hey, if you want to work from home, you got to get a cable modem." And she did not want to get cable. She had some crappy, like the lowest tier DSL at the time. And said, "Hey, well, I'm not paying this extra money." Well, then we were like, "Well, then we're not going to save you this amount of money of you having to drive in every day." Because she drove, it was about 25 miles a trip, so it was going to be 50 miles a day. And when you look at the cost over a month of 50 miles a day times 20, for a 4-week period, that would more than make up for her the cost of her going to cable. All right, so better health, less exposure to sick. Now that's especially true for teachers. Imagine us as students and teachers going into these schools and how many different weird sicknesses you're exposed to. Every time you touch a desk, ugh. All right, able to spend more time with the family? I don't know about that. You got kids driving you nuts while you're trying to work. Taking control. Hey, I can take control over when my work is performed. In some cases yes, in some cases no. And then I got the flexibility, hey, if I want to take Friday off and hang out with my kids because they have a snow day and then work Saturday, I can do that. So a lot of neat benefits. But again, there's a lot of administration that goes into building a successful teleworker program. All right, community benefits. Helps build a sustainable economy. Woo! Increase that baby. Increases the value of real estate. What? Less traffic, less smog, lower demands on office space. All right, if there's lower demands for office space, wouldn't the price go down? I don't know how that increases the value of real estate. Anyway, so helps reduce contemporary problems such as traffic. I think I already mentioned that 3 or 4 times. Increases productivity. I don't believe that. And alleviate symptoms of the digital divide. I can't even read this without laughing. Okay, I'm back. Next slide. All right, so obviously on the bad side, it's more difficult to track employee progress. We found where I was at that we could only do this for people where we could measure their work. Like transcriptionists were easy because they had to code so many, or they had to transcribe so many words per day or per week, something like that. But if you have somebody that it's very hard to put a measurement on their work, it's a lot harder to monitor them and track their productivity. Because again, the last thing you want to do is say, hey, everybody can work from home and woohoo, and you watch your productivity just go down because nobody's monitoring stuff. All right, then again, it's necessary to implement a new management style. Now as managers, instead of walking around and checking things, you may have to give your employees a call every once in a while. Hey, how's it going? Any problems? Things like that. So you have to change your management from, instead of being, very personable up front, now you're more productivity oriented. I need to check these figures. I need to make sure these things are happening, and I need to call my employees every once in a while. And then for the individual, the feeling of isolation. Imagine a single person working from home. So he works from home all day, then he stays home all day, so he has that feeling of isolation. You have slower connections. Obviously, at work, you're at least at 100 megabits per second. Most people's dial-up is, the average speed, I think, is anywhere between 10 and 20 megabyte download. So it's a big difference. Then obviously the distractions, especially if you have kids, especially if you have younger kids that aren't in school yet. You're like, oh, if I get to work from home, I'll save money and not take my kid to daycare. And then all of a sudden you're watching your kid all day, and then when your husband comes home or whoever else comes home, your significant other comes home, then they have to watch the kid while you work. So here's daddy who works all day and then comes home and he has to watch the baby because mom has to go work for 8 hours because mom was watching the baby all day. So you can kind of see there are kinds of obviously issues with it that have to be worked out. All right, so how does the teleworker work? Well, typically the teleworker goes home and an IT guy person goes out there, or you give them some software and they install it themselves, and they install some VPN software, and then every time they want to connect to work, they install that. So there's a bunch of different models. You've got the mobile worker who may go to Starbucks and work on their laptop using VPN stuff and go into work, or you have the individual who's at home who has a VPN connection, or maybe you put a small Soho box at their office or the satellite office where they're at, and they connect that way. So there's a lot of different ways to connect. One way that's also becoming more popular is SSL. I know where I was at, we had an SSL appliance. So we had this box that we bought for like $3,000, and we bought an extra IP address from Time Warner, and so that all our workers had to do was just they didn't install anything on their PC. They could just go open up a web browser and type in our IP address, and it would take them right to the SSL appliance. And at that point, they would log in. The SSL appliance would then connect to our domain controller and verify their login. And then depending on their login, it would present them with icons on the screen on their web page for what they had access to. So the initial setup on our end was painful, but once we got that set up, it was great because we didn't have to go to anybody's house. We didn't have to support any software on their PC. All they had to do was turn on their PC and open up a web browser. And if there was a problem with their PC or their web browser, it wasn't our fault. They had to call their ISP because, again, that wasn't our territory. So without having to have a VPN on their PC and that kind of thing, we didn't have to monitor what antivirus they had. We didn't have to do anything at the home end. If you had a problem at home, it was your issue, and that was awesome. All right. So typically at home, they're showing here on the router, but really what happens is we install some kind of VPN software on your PC. Most of the time you have a router from Time Warner Cable or your home router, and we're not going to install something on that, and they're not really made for that. So we install VPN software on your PC, and then it encrypts the data from your PC all the way to the head end where we have our firewall, and then you get into the corporate office. So, and don't forget, even though they call it tunneling, all we're doing when we're creating a VPN is we're just encoding our stream of data in some kind of GIF wrap so that people can't view it as it's going across the internet. Remember, there are all kinds of programs to scan packets going across the internet and find out what IPs they're coming from, things like that, and look for certain packages, maybe Word documents, things like that. But if we GIF wrap ours, then those programs won't be able to see that stuff. And then maybe they are able to grab some of our packets. But hopefully our GIF wrap or our VPN software, the encryption is strong enough that they can't break it, and they'll move on to a softer target. All right, comparing broadband solutions. So remember, your cable system, obviously, they have a central office. They call it the head end. So here's the head end, the central office, and then they have a local loop that goes out to your neighborhood. And then there's amplifiers in that. And remember, that's a trunk. Typically they lay fiber cable that goes into junction boxes, and then from the junction boxes, they distribute out feeder cables out to the different houses. And again, it's amplified wherever they need to. And then it goes, obviously, it drops into the house. So that's the way the cable system works. It's very similar to, your plain old telephone system. Only your plain old telephone system typically didn't use fiber. Now, whoever made this graph, I don't know what they were smoking. So here's cable and the electromagnetic spectrum. So I don't see cable anywhere. I see cosmic rays, some electric waves, some TV, FM radio, microwave. I don't see anything useful there. Moving on. All right, DOCSIS, Data Over Cable Service, interface specification. This is the standard developed by Cable Labs on your ISP equipment, your cable provider equipment. So their head-end cables have to sit a certain standard. Their modems have to be this standard. So all this stuff, and basically it specifies requirements that have to occur at level or layer 1 and layer 2 of the OSI model. So make sure when you ever see DOC, DOC SIS, we're talking about a cable standard. Just like Ethernet is a cable standard for our internal Ethernet cables, DOC SIS is the standard for cable devices and hardware. Alright, in these slides I keep calling it the head end, but it's just the central office. So basically the central office needs a cable modem termination system, and then at the subscriber's end they give everybody just a cable modem. So all these cable modems then eventually connect to the central office, and they all hook into a big piece of equipment called a cable modem termination system. And that's it. So just like for wireless, you need a wireless access point and a wireless NIC card. Then all these wireless NIC cards can all connect to the wireless access point. It kind of works the same way. Alright, DSL, a little bit different. DSL provides high-speed connections over the installed copper wire from the old telephone systems. So depending on where you live, that may be your only option. You may not have Time Warner Cable in your area. So there's two basic types of DSL, asymmetric and symmetric. Obviously with symmetric, you've got to provide the same speed in both directions. With asymmetric, I can give you 10 megs down and 2 megs up. So asymmetric does not have to be the same. Symmetrical has to be the same. That's how I've always remembered it. So the problem is that with ASDL, you can only, the local loop has to be less than 3.39 miles. You have to be very close to a central office. Otherwise, you're stuck with SDSL, which gives you the same speed in both directions. Now, they don't want to increase your upload speed, so typically you get slower download speeds. Now, when this slide came out, I don't know how long ago. I mean, it was just published last year. But I don't know if that is still a standard or if they have changed things or made new equipment to give people higher speed. Because I know now I've got students that have DSL that are getting some pretty high speeds up and down, and they can't all be that close to a central office. So take that last bullet point with a grain of salt. All right. So with DSL, you have a transceiver that connects to the computer of the teleworker, and then at the local office, they have a DSL access multiplexer. Basically, they have a device that all these phone lines kind of plug into, and then it separates the traffic and it allows it to go. So again, same principle as the wireless access point and the wireless NIC card. So at your house, typically what they do is they give you a bunch of these separators, I guess, to put on all your phone jacks to separate the phone and the data connections. But at my house, when I had DSL back in the day, I actually installed the separator at when the phone wire came in. So I separated it right there, and then I had a wire that came off into my PC or my cable modem, or DSL modem at the time, and then all the other lines went onto my phone, so I didn't have to have those filters at every phone. So it was kind of nice. But again, I had a basement, it was big and wide open, all the phone stuff was there, it was all older stuff, so it was easy to play with. Alright, and then we got broadband wireless technology types. We have municipal Wi-Fi, which are they say mesh, but they're typically partial mesh. Now we're talking about citywide Wi-Fi. And if you're lucky enough to live in a city and get free Wi-Fi, it's kind of nice. But again, your speed is always going to be slower with Wi-Fi than it is. Well, I don't say always, because obviously the AD and the AC standard are really getting fast. But typically, your cities aren't doing that. Your cities are doing G. If you're lucky, they're doing N. If a bunch of your neighbors are all sharing your access point, it slows your speed down, that kind of stuff. And then there's WiMAX. Remember, WiMAX, basically somebody goes out and says, hey, I want to rent space on a tower. So they rent space on a radio tower for a radio station. And they buy, hey, I want to buy 20, or let's say 100 gigs of internet from Time Warner Cable. So they have a fiber line that comes in and gives them 100 gigs. And then they connect that to that antenna, and then they start pushing out wireless internet. And then they go to all the houses, within a couple miles of that antenna, and they try to sell them wireless. And if somebody will buy, hey, we'll send you 2 gigs, and it'll be this much a month, and here's your password to allow access to that stuff. So it's kind of nice if that's in your area, because again they partition off what they like. They'll crap what provision you what you need. So if you're getting 2 megs, you're paying for 2 megs. So it's a little bit different than your normal Wi-Fi. But again, it's not in all areas. You have to be close to a tower where they install it, that kind of thing. If you're in a big city, there's a lot of WiMAX going on. Like I know in the city of Canton, there's towers and bigger buildings everywhere, and there's a bunch of these WiMAX companies that are selling this stuff. But out here in Hartville, where we've got the farm fields and fresh cows, not so much. All right, then you got your cellular. Cellular used to be the bomb back in the day when it was 3G. Like I had students that would come in, they would plug a device into their 3G phone, and they had unlimited data, and it would turn their phone into a hotspot. And then everybody in the class that had wireless could then use their cellular to get internet. And it was fast, crazy fast. And because we all had unlimited wireless plans at the time, it was great. Well, and then the cellular company said, hey, we are seeing what people are doing. We're going to start charging for data. And then it all fell apart. Makes me sad. But I digress. But again, some people and some companies make enough money where having cellular wireless is affordable, and they'll do 4G. Like there's cars now that have 4G cellular built into them, so you can get internet in your car all the time as you're driving around, things like that. All right, and then there's satellite implementations where you can get satellite. We had a doctor that lived way down in Canton South. I mean, it was like 30 miles out there in BFE, and he had nothing around him, just farms. And his only option was satellite, which worked okay for internet and email, but we could never get our VPN software to work because the delay was so long. He would always time out. So, man, I would say it's not that expensive. I mean, it's not anything outrageous compared to normal cable. All right, so cable is broadband, is shared by many users. That's not exactly true as much as it used to be. Years ago, when cable first kind of came out, cable kind of got a bad reputation because what happened was they didn't provision their network, which means they didn't assign people bandwidth. They only had limiters. So if you got on during the day, and let's say when you got on during the workday, and they had extra speed to give, you wouldn't get any extra speed. You would be limited to your max speed. But in the evening, when everybody came home and everybody got on their cable modems, your speed would go down because now you had to share with everybody else. And then they oversold their bandwidth. So nobody ever got their full speed from 6 to 10 o'clock at night. So cable kind of got a bad reputation that way, and I know Time Warner Cable has done a lot, and they actually provision now, and most of the time, like if you pay for this amount of bandwidth, you get this amount of bandwidth all the time. So it's not really like that anymore. DSL, they say limited bandwidth, that is distance sensitive. Again, that's also not the case. You can get some very nice DSL plans, especially in our area. I've had people getting 20 by 2 DSL, and that's turbo speed for internet. Obviously Time Warner, their best is 50 by 5 now, but they're actually coming out with 70 or 100 by 10. That's going to be introduced pretty soon. I know they're testing it in our area. All right, and then fiber to the home. Woohoo! All right, if you got the money, that's what I'm talking about, baby. You get a fiber pipe right from the distribution node right to your house, all dropped underground. So that would be nice, but how many of us can afford that? Or what's the chance of us being that close to a distribution point? All right, then cellular, obviously, coverage is an issue. Hey, what is my provider in my area? And then it's the cost. Now we have to pay for downloading our crappy plans. All right, 5-way mesh. Hey, if you work in the city, it's great. But again, you're sharing that with everybody else. And then WiMAX, they say the bit rate is limited to 2 megs per subscriber. That's not again. That's also not necessarily true. I've seen WiMAX selling at 10 megs, but who knows? And then satellite, obviously, it's a little bit more expensive than cable and DSL. But again, if that's your only choice, then that's what you got to go with. So 9 times out of 10 in the Stark County where we live, I typically recommend that your first choice should be Time Warner Cable, just because they've made so many changes in the last 5 years. They've laid a bunch of fiber, they've provisioned their network, a lot of good changes. And they're a much stronger company, which again was why they just recently got bought out. because their stuff will look so good. But I digress. All right, configuring XDSL. All right. Anytime you're doing point-to-point links, your provider typically wants to do PPP. And remember, for your point-to-point links, your options are PPP or HDLC. Now, Cisco stuff defaults to HDLC, and I know anytime I work with AT&T, they always wanted HDLC. That was their preferred method because they were running all Cisco stuff. But if you're not running all Cisco stuff, then you're going to do PPP. So if you remember from your PPP configuration chapter, remember you could authenticate with PAP or CHAP. So we would do PPP, and then we put CHAP or PAP, and then your password and our host name, that kind of stuff. If you don't remember this, I think it was in your scaling networks class. All right, and that pretty much wraps it up. So again, the short chapter, the big thing is it's awesome to be able to have people work from home. If you're a business owner, like me, having people work from home, it makes them happy. You have a lot less call-offs, a lot less drama in the office, but you also have to monitor that, and you have to monitor it pretty well. Because now, instead of just being at the office and, oh, hey, everybody's here, so everybody's working, now it's like, hey, how much work is getting done? I've got people that were all the time, I want to say all the time, but maybe twice a year I've got to go and talk to them and say, hey, I've noticed this stuff here has been dropped off, or this is kind of being forgotten about. We need to get this done. We need to produce this amount of work in order to cover your expenses for working from home. So again, it's a lot different management style if you want to do this, but it's awesome because again, it's very easy to attract employees. I mean, hey, if you're the IT company that allows employees to work from home half the week, that is huge. And if you're a programmer and you want to work from home, that's an awesome benefit. So you get the idea. And then again, as far as cable goes, in our area, I always recommend Time Warner Cable over anything else. But DSL is also a strong choice. Other than that, yeah, you're kind of on your own. Good luck with that. All right, so again, if you have any questions, make sure you bring them up in class. Other than that, we'll see you there.